Before diving into actually writing code, doing everything associated with writing an application, let's kind of take a high-level overview of some of the best practices we'll be implementing and kind of why we'll be implementing them throughout this course. So, best practice number one is give context when you're asking for permission to send push notifications. And this mostly relates to iOS because Android users are going to give permission to send push notifications or anything else when they download that application. So it's good to know what that platform difference is between iOS and Android. And on that note, something I still like to do is to kind of reaffirm to Android users that will be sending them push notifications and almost prompting them or informing them in the onboarding process, kind of like we do for iOS users. And while you're doing that, make sure to show them the value associated with giving permission to send push notifications. How's it going to help them? If it's a messaging app, you're letting people know when an unread message is available. If it's a trivia app, you're letting them know when new questions are available, and so on and so forth. And finally, don't make it the very first thing the user sees when opening the app. This is something I've seen with a fair number of React Native apps, Cordova apps, even native iOS apps, where as soon as you open the application, as soon as it loads, they're asking you for permission to send push notifications. And that's not a great user experience. You haven't gotten to give the user an introduction to your application so that they can understand what the app is about and how those push notifications will benefit them. Okay, and next up is to allow the user to register multiple devices. Think about it this way. How many devices do you have? Users likely have different devices as well. They've likely got an iPhone, an iPad, maybe they've got an Android tablet, maybe they've got an Android phone as well. People have multiple devices these days, so it's beneficial to allow users to register with multiple devices and don't continuously override push notification tokens so that you can only send tokens to the last device that they logged in with. This means you'll want to configure your database schema to allow you to store multiple device tokens per user. If you're using a SQL solution, or even depending on how you've got your NoSQL database set up, you may want to pull push tokens away from the actual user collection or user table and associate each push token with a specific user ID. And finally, capture more than just the device token. Maybe it's capturing the platform they run on, or we'll see we're capturing the time zone. Capture other associated information about that user, about that device, so that you can properly segment information, however you may need to in the future. Also, make sure that you manage the badge number effectively. Badge numbers can be very distracting, at least to me. They clutter up my home screen. I don't like it, and I've actually uninstalled and reinstalled apps. Sometimes I never reinstalled those just because of that badge number. So think about when it would be appropriate to increment or decrement the badge count, and make sure you do that in a way that most benefits the user. A few examples: say you've got a messaging app, a badge count could equal the number of unread messages that user has. Or if you have a banking app, badge count may be the number of unread notifications, or like the number of transactions that have occurred on their account since they last looked. Or finally, given our example for this course, a trivia app, a badge count could be the number of new questions that are available to the user. Next up, consider preloading content via a push notification. This means that you can actually send a payload along with the notification message and the badge number, so that title, that body, and the badge count. You can actually send more information with it. And with that, you can use that data to preload the content. That way the user doesn't have to wait for additional API requests or anything to get some sort of valuable experience. They open the app, the data is there from the push notification instantly, and you can automatically give that user a good experience, and you can get more data that you need in the background. And finally, it gives them some level of an offline experience. Because that push notification was sent at some point when they did have a connection, you sent some additional data along. It's a good way to preload the content and at least give them a basic experience while they're offline. And consider duplicating your notification history. Push notifications aren't actually guaranteed to be delivered. If it's critical information, really if it's any information sent via push, consider duplicating it so that the user can come back and actually look at that. So for example, if say you've got 5 notifications, but you open one of them, you didn't get to see the other 5 notifications, or you wanted to interact with those. When you open one of those, all the other ones are going to disappear, and that's kind of a crummy experience. especially if you want to see that information. So duplicating that notification history can be really beneficial in that case. Or if you accidentally clear all your notifications, even though you wanted to see one. And the way I like to do this, and the way we'll do this later on in the course, is to actually create a new collection or a table that duplicates every single push notification you send out, and then we'll associate that with a user so that a user can then go back and kind of see what notifications have actually been sent to them in the past. All right, and this is a big one. This is a personal pet peeve of mine. Make sure that you're respecting a user's time zones. Push notifications at night often don't get read. Push notifications at night are annoying. And push notifications at night get notifications disabled or apps uninstalled. That's no fun. So make sure you're respecting the user's time zone, or at least respecting their settings, so that you don't spam them when they're sleeping and wake up with a dozen notifications when they don't want them in the middle of the night. And make sure that you're displaying notifications inside of your application. If they actually have that app open, make sure you show it to them. So consider what happens when that user receives a notification inside of the application. On Android, you may get a push notification still. On iOS, you don't. How do you want that user to interact with it? For example, in our trivia app, when a new set of questions is available and they're already in the application, what experience do we want them to have at that point? So these are things that you'll want to take into consideration. Expanding on the respecting users' time zones, consider allowing the user to customize when they actually receive notifications. And I want to preface this by saying that this is less critical. This is more advanced, depending on where you are in your product. There's probably other places more pertinent, more critical that you can put development resources in, but it is a consideration. And with this, I mean, give users an option. What if they're a night owl and they're awake at night? They might want push notifications at that point in time. So give them options to go ahead and customize when they should allow or get push notifications, and then you use that information when you're dispatching push notifications. Also consider, if you've got different types of notifications, allow them to decide what types of notifications they want. Just like you get with email, where there's newsletters, but then there's also critical system updates. Those are two different types of messages. Allow them to decide what types of push notifications they get. That way they don't potentially disable all push notifications. And that just gives the user options to customize their experience to be ideal, and that allows your app to provide more overall value, which hopefully will improve interaction and just keep them around in your app more. Okay, and last one is to preview what they're going to do. Don't just show them that they've got a new notification. Give them a preview of what they'll get when they interact with that specific notification. For example, if it's a messaging app, preview the message that someone sent them so they know the context of who sent them that message. Is it an important message? Is it not an important message? So that they can know how they want to interact with it. Or preview the transaction that just took place. If this is a good case for telling someone that some spammy transaction just took place at a gas station across town that you haven't ever been to. So that's a good place to give them a preview and decide whether this is a notification or a transaction that I approve or one that is fraudulent. And then finally, for our trivia app, what's one of the new questions available? Let them start interacting with your application before they even get into your application. Show them that question that they'll be answering as soon as they open the app. And finally, just remember that notifications go to people, so build your notification infrastructure and your messaging and your targeting around people. Just remember to build for people. This can extend beyond push notifications, but it's a good thing to remember.